This is a tale from long, long ago. More than 400 years ago, in a land in the North Sea, there lived a man named Momlog Noland. Noland was an explorer, but his stories of adventure were so amazing that nobody believed them. The villagers didn't know whether they were true or just made up. One day, Noland returned from his travels and reported to the king. I found a mountain of gold on an island of vast sea. The brave king took 2,000 soldiers and went with Nolan to verify his claim. They set sail upon the great ocean. They were buffeted by tempests and attacked by sea monsters. By the time they reached the island, only the king, Nolan, and 100 soldiers remained. But instead of finding a mountain of gold, there was only jungle. Nolan was sentenced to death for lying. Before he died, his last words were, "I know! The mountain of gold must have sunk into the sea!" The king and the others were flabbergasted. No one believed Nolan anymore, but he stuck to his lies to the very end. And so, the tale of Nolan the Liar became a folk tale within the world of One Piece. Similarly, in the real world, such stories are often preserved and passed down through oral traditions. Nolan's story is strikingly similar to the legend of El Dorado, the fabled city of gold that drove many European explorers to search for treasure in the Americas. Like Nolan, who believed the gold sank into the sea, some explorers thought El Dorado lay in or beneath a lake, particularly the mythical lake Parime. Welcome back to One Piece of History. In this episode, we will look at the historical inspiration Eiichiro Oda drew from when writing the Skypiea saga. This saga begins shortly after Robin joins the crew, with a bang, when a massive galleon falls from the sky. Robin examines a coffin found in the wreckage. Inside, Chopper, the crew's doctor, discovers a skull with signs of an old method of brain surgery, suggesting this person died over 200 years ago. Alongside the body, they also find a map, and written on it, Skypiea, a sky island, which is where they decide to go next. With no clue how to reach the sky island, they decide to head to an island called Chaya first. There, the crew lands in Mocktown, a lawless haven for pirates. It looks like something straight out of the Caribbean during the golden age of piracy. And that theme of historical Mesoamerican settings continues throughout the saga. In this town, they encounter a pirate named Bellamy, a nod to the 18th century English pirate Samuel Bellamy. While the fictional Bellamy is arrogant and cruel, Samuel Bellamy was actually famed for his mercy and generosity during his raids, which earned him the nickname the Prince of Pirates, or even the Robin Hood of the Sea. They also encounter the pirate crew of Blackbeard, a direct reference to one of the most infamous pirates in history. Both even share the same last name. One Piece's Blackbeard is called Marshall D. Teach, while the real Blackbeard's name was Edward Teach. So, Robin explores Mocktown and returns with a map. On it is the location of Chaya's so-called biggest weirdo, a man named Mont Blanc Cricket. At Cricket's place, the crew finds a storybook called Nolan the Liar. It's a children's tale, but according to Sanji, Mont Blanc Nolan really did exist over 400 years ago. Soon after, they meet Mont Blanc Cricket, who reveals that he is a descendant of Nolan. He's been searching for gold at the bottom of the sea, convinced that his ancestor wasn't a liar. Because the Straw Hats want to find the Sky Island, Cricket shares Nolan's journal with them, which mentions the existence of a Sky Island. Cricket also tells them that if a Sky Island really exists, there's only one way to reach it, by riding something called the Knock-Up Stream, a powerful vertical current. He also shares the final entry from Nolan's journal. It reads, "I saw the gold in the skull's right eye." This is a mysterious clue, but an important one. The next day, following Cricket's instructions, the Straw Hats launch themselves into the air via the Knock-Up Stream and land high above the clouds in a place known as the White Sea. As they recover, They're suddenly approached by two figures, one dressed in the clothing of an indigenous warrior, and the other clad in metal armor. The indigenous warrior's clothing and mask resemble that of historical indigenous peoples of the Americas. The man in armor wears a suit that strongly resembles what Spanish conquistadors would have worn during the colonization of the Americas. These details are no coincidence. The Straw Hats are taken in by two Sky Island residents, Conis and her father. But peace doesn't last. The island's law enforcement, the White Berets, are already looking for the Straw Hats. They seem to be inspired by the US Army's Green Berets, continuing the American theme. And they appear to operate like a version of ICE, the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, patrolling borders and enforcing authority over outsiders. Suddenly, some of the Straw Hats are taken away by a giant shrimp. It's later revealed that Conis was the one who summoned it, but she didn't have a choice. On Skypiea, everyone is under constant surveillance. If Conis had refused to cooperate, she would have been killed. This type of mass surveillance and enforced snitching is a distinguishing trait of totalitarian regimes, which Oda drew inspiration from. Conis and her father are then taken in by the old man in armor, whose name is Ganfall, and who is revealed to be the former god or ruler of Skypiea. Ganfall explains that two groups have been locked in a bitter conflict for centuries: the Sky People and a warrior tribe known as the Shandians. We then see the Shandian village. Its architecture and clothing clearly draw inspiration from a blend of real-world indigenous American cultures. The Shandians consider anyone who calls themselves God, and all who serve under them, to be their sworn enemies. Eventually, the Straw Hats realize something. The place that Nolan spoke of didn't sink into the sea. It was launched into the sky. They discovered that Skull's right eye refers to a missing part of Chaya Island. 400 years ago, this section was blown into the air by the knock-up stream. It's now known as Upper Yard. This is the original land of the Shandians. On Skypiea, the soil of Upper Yard is considered sacred. Both the Sky People and the Shandians fight over it, mirroring how colonial powers violently displaced indigenous peoples to claim land and resources. Soon, the current god of Skypiea is revealed, Enel, a self-proclaimed deity with immense power who rules with an iron fist. His lightning powers and overall design are heavily inspired by Raijin, the classical Japanese god of thunder. It's not a coincidence that the Shandians' greatest enemy is called God, and that he employs priests and divine soldiers. One of the main ways in which the European colonists would justify their actions is that they had a duty to spread Christianity among the indigenous so-called heathens. The divine soldiers having goat-like appearances is reminiscent of the Lamb of God, a title for Jesus in the Bible. Ganfall explains to the Straw Hats that when Upper Yard was blasted into the sky, it was already home to the Shandians. The Sky People took it by force, displacing the native inhabitants, a clear allusion to colonial violence and genocide. We witness a tense flashback between Wiper, leader of the Shandians, and Ganfall. The conflict, though fictional, reflects the painful conversations between colonizers and colonized, perhaps even evoking modern parallels. Next, Robin explores ruins that bear unmistakable similarities to ancient Mesoamerican architecture, particularly that of the Maya. He discovers so-called hieroglyphs that strongly resemble real-world Maya glyphs, further anchoring the saga in historical and cultural reference. When one of Enel's divine soldiers desecrates the ruins, Robin doesn't hesitate. She confronts and defeats him, standing up for the preservation of history and culture. She then continues her exploration, discovering even more ruins that seem to tell a forgotten story. The design of these ruins again bears a striking resemblance to ancient Mayan architecture. That connection becomes even clearer when she uncovers the ancient city of Shandora, the sacred homeland of the Shandians. Its layout and stonework likely draw direct inspiration from Chichen Itza, the famous Mayan city in present-day Mexico. We see another flashback where Gunfall, the former god of Skypiea, begins to realize the injustice done to the Shandians. This echoes how a small number of Europeans eventually began to speak out against the brutalities of colonialism. One of the most powerful voices among them was Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish priest who witnessed the atrocities firsthand. He wrote, "Their reason for killing and destroying such an infinite number of souls is that Christians have an ultimate aim, which is to acquire gold and to swell themselves with riches in a very brief time, and thus rise to high estate disproportionate to their merits. It should be kept in mind that their insatiable greed and ambition, the greatest ever seen in the world, is the cause of their villainies. And also, those lands are so rich and felicitous, the native peoples so meek and patient, so easy to subject, that our Spaniards have no more consideration for them than beasts. And I say this from my own knowledge of the acts I witnessed. But I should not say them beasts, for, thanks be to God, they have treated beasts with some respect. I should say instead, like excrement on the public squares." Next, Enel reveals his grand plan, to leave Skypiea and colonize the moon using his massive flying ark, Maxim. Interestingly, the name may reference the Maxim gun, the first fully automatic machine gun, which played a key role in European imperial conquest in the 19th century. As we return to the Shandian struggle, we learn that their resistance is not just about land. Their revered warrior ancestor, Galgara, had once formed a deep bond with a man named Mont Blanc Noland. So we dive into their story, the truth behind the legend of the great explorer Noland and the proud warrior Galgara, set 4 centuries in the past. The story begins with Noland and his crew arriving in the land of the Shandians. They quickly discover that the village is suffering from a mysterious illness called tree fever, a disease that affects both people and plants. Desperate for a cure, the Shandians decide to sacrifice a young girl to a massive snake they worship as a god. This practice reflects historical Mesoamerican traditions of human sacrifice to appease deities during times of crisis. But before the ritual can be completed, Nolan steps in and kills the snake to save the girl's life. Outraged, the Shandians confront him, but Nolan responds fiercely. He calls the ritual barbaric and says, "This savage ceremony is an affront to progress. I won't stand for it. People like me, explorers and researchers, we set out to sea in hopes of making the world a better place. This is an insult to everything we stand for." His words echo the Enlightenment ideals of reason, progress, and civilization that shaped 17th and 18th century European thought. He promises to drive the so-called evil spirit out of their village. And so, later, while foraging for medicine, Nolan is attacked by another snake. He explains to Galgara that his own homeland once suffered from tree fever too, until a botanist discovered a cure through exploration and science. Hearing this, Galgara kills the snake and pleads with Nolan to save their village. This moment marks the beginning of a deep bond between the two men. True to his word, Nolan treats the village and successfully cures the tree fever, saving countless lives. This act of bringing medicine and knowledge to a foreign land reflects the ideology of the civilizing mission, a narrative often used to justify European and American imperialism. The idea was captured in Rudyard Kipling's infamous poem The White Man's Burden, which claimed it was a duty of Europeans to uplift indigenous peoples, a belief rooted in racist superiority. It goes, "Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine, and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch sloth and heathen folly bring all your hopes to naught." Grateful for Nolan's help, Calgara shows him the legendary City of Gold, Shandora, the mythical El Dorado. He offers Nolan all its riches, except for one thing, the Golden Bell. The bell, Calgara explains, carries a sacred message to their ancestors in the sky. "We're right here." It helps their souls find their way home. a spiritual connection to the land that goes far beyond gold. Their friendship takes a turn when Calgara discovers that Nolan's crew has cut down the sacred ancestor trees of Shandora, an act he sees as deep betrayal. As a result, Nolan and his men leave. But the truth is, the trees had been affected with tree fever. Nolan's men removed them to stop the disease from spreading. As a sign of reconciliation, Calgara rings the golden bell, a gesture that speaks far louder than words. The two men promise they'll meet again. Just like in the legend, when Nolan returns to his homeland, he tells his king about the City of Gold. A few years later, they set out on a new expedition to find it again. But when they arrive at the island, Shandora is nowhere to be found, as if it had vanished without a trace. With no trace of the Golden City, the king accuses Nolan of lying. Just like the tale said, he is executed, branded a liar by history. But we now know the truth. Shandora was real. It was launched to the sky by the Nogab stream and became part of Skypiea. That story lived on through oral tradition among Calgara's descendants, the present-day Shandians, who swore to one day sound the golden bell again. Eventually, Luffy takes upon himself to defeat Inal and strike the bell, to carry out that long-awaited promise. And with one mighty blow, he does. The golden bell rings through the sky. The sound of the bell reaches far and wide, not just through Skypiea, but across the blue sea as well. Down below, Mont Blanc Cricket hears the bell and smiles. After all these years, he finally has proof that Nolan was telling the truth. And with it, the message that echoed through time. We're right here. The Skypiea saga isn't just a high-flying adventure. It's a reflection of what happened here on Earth. The colonial conquest of indigenous peoples, the destruction of cultures, the search for gold at all costs. That's very real. And just like the Golden Bell, maybe we need to listen more carefully to the voices that were silenced. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe, click the notification bell, wink wink, and I will see you in the next episode of One Piece of History.